Welcome to our Climate Studio Wisdom, live from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. We bring together experts from science, politics and spirituality to explore the unfolding climate crisis. I'm Golo Pilz and I will be tonight's moderator. And today we talk about global unity, a very interesting topic. This is the last week of the climate conference, and the summit is struggling to focus on the well-being of the planet. Basically, mainly due to the geopolitical situation right now. Diplomatic tensions have spilled over to the G20 meeting and in Brazil, where 20 major economies discussed climate finance. They reached a fragile agreement, and we have to see the text and the numbers before we can say anything on the outcome. European nations are pushing for more countries to contribute. Brazil and others are rejecting to pay more, to contribute more. The Brahma Kumaris again has started this week with lots of program and activities. I'm glad to have two experts with me tonight to share some light on the unfolding climate situation. I have with me John D. Louis. You are a journalist, filmmaker and ecologist and have written, directed and presented dozens of films on the environment. You're currently ecosystem ambassador and for the Common Land Foundation, and you're also the founder of the Ecosystem Restoration Camp. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have also with us tonight Sister Jayanti Kriplani. You are the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, a complicated title, in the spiritual organization with more than 5,000 meditation centers in India and 600 centers abroad. The Brahma Kumaris is accredited to the UNFCCC process since 2009, and you have been to many, many climate conferences, and you're also one of the veterans, I understand. You're also the head of our climate delegation at the COP. Welcome, Sister Jayanti.
Thank you.
That brings us to our first question. John, please share with our audience what has brought you to the COP and what are your major activities inside the conference?
Well, I'm also fairly experienced in going to COPs, and I'm not surprised if there's difficulty here in the COPs. I don't expect for the changes to actually come from the top down. And I've been working with creation of the ecosystem restoration communities for some time, and they're growing very fast. So we now have 80 of these ecosystem restoration camps and communities around the world in 6 different continents. And we can see that people are ready to take action, and that they don't need permission, and that they don't need further policy. And they will the moisture in the lower hydrological cycle rather than having thermic drafts pushing it into the upper atmosphere, which is a worse greenhouse gas. High-level moisture is more effective as a greenhouse gas than CO2 and more quantitatively impactful. And so it also allows them to understand and protect and increase biodiversity. So once the people have a collective intelligence surrounding these issues, they can create botanical sanctuaries. And with even small teams, it's possible to ensure that the most endangered species don't go extinct, because we have to actively restore them. So no 66,000 people wandering around in Baku are not as effective as a few thousand people who are actually growing soils and restoring ecological.
That's quite a statement.
So that's why I'm here.
Okay, great. This gives us some insight what you're doing, and it's a wonderful job to restore the local communities and empower themselves. Sister Jayanti, many companies and even countries suddenly go green. Products get eco-labels or new names into natural. A new word has been coined, greenwashing. In the world of spiritual training, we undergo also a washing process, but it's related to cleansing, or let me say, to the purification of the inner world of the soul. There's a subtle relation between the inner state of mind and the condition of the world, what's going on here in this world. Can you share a bit your insights?
Thank you. Yes, definitely. If there's one person who's peaceful, they can spread peace around themselves. I'm thinking of a situation when there was an earthquake in Greece. There'd been an earthquake in Turkey a little earlier, then the next one was in Greece. Mm-hmm. And one individual who was a meditator was in an open space office with about 12 others. And the earthquake struck and they were on the first floor. And she just stayed very calm. And they all knew she was a meditator. And so she didn't say anything, but they also then just sat quietly. And the quake finished, and then they quietly got and left. If they had tried to run on staircases, if the earthquake was happening at that moment, arms and legs and who knows what else would have broken. And so many, many examples, but that's just one little story, real life story. In the same way, if there's one person who's afraid and fearful, that's also infectious, and they create fear all around them, and there can be panic within moments. Now just multiply the fear and the anxiety about the future that exists in people's minds now, and you can see how tangible it is and how heavy the atmosphere has become generally across the world, but even especially at COP29. And so what we can do is to teach ourselves or educate ourselves to come back to that natural, original state of the inner being, which is peace. We use this expression, Om Shanti, I am peace. And we don't just say it, but we feel it. And so when I come back to that feeling of peace, I'm connecting with the inner being, and I'm able to tap into the original qualities and values of the self and be an instrument to share those. We've moved so far away from our spiritual identity into a physical consciousness, materialistic consciousness, that we have impatience, we have anger, we have ego, greed. All of these things are uppermost. And so that's created the state of the world as we see it now.
So the inner world reflects into the outer world.
Absolutely.
Quite some good insight. Thanks very much. John, a bit of question about media, because you're a media person, and media plays a key role in transporting the climate message and also create awareness. However, climate change denial and fake news are easily available through social media, and they're rampant. They're everywhere now. And UN boss Antonio Guterres, he said, we must also fight the coordinated disinformation campaign on climate change, greenwashing, and the harassment of climate scientists. What can be done to bring back ethics and truth into the media?
Well, this is dependent on creating a collective intelligence within the media communities. So it's up to the individuals, but as individuals, we have limited capability. It is the power of the system that's spreading this out. And so if the norms, and as we can see, the norms in the regular media and norms in the social media, I think especially social media. I mean, I know when I was young and working in the networks that we took it very seriously, that we were there to tell the truth and there to spread awareness and knowledge so that there could be informed populations that could govern themselves. And if they don't have this information, then that's when it's really dangerous. So what the media decides to do, and it has been perverted by the money. by the idea that everything is a commodity. So coming to a place where you understand that the materialism is not where the value is, then you're in a place where you can actually create value without thinking, what do I get for this? If you give me something, then I'll create the value. If you create the value and then you're rewarded by society and by conscious people who say, well, that's got to be supported, that makes sense. But if you say, well, I'm not going to do anything until somebody gives me some money, I'm going to do nothing, that doesn't make any sense. You know, we're all, and when we actually can engage more and more people in the communication of where they're actually touching and working in the soil, working with plants. And we also have to realize that everything has to change. It's not, the climate is reflecting, or the landscapes are reflecting human consciousness. We've cut the trees, we've bulldozed or plowed up the land and exposed it to solar radiation. That's not normal. Millions of years, hundreds of millions of years have gone by without the solar radiation directly hitting the surface of the Earth. That's the moon or Mars or some other planet where the solar radiation doesn't pass through an oxygenated atmosphere, ozone layer, and have a canopy of vegetation. So when we understand that, and everybody understands that, then you can say, well, look at these cars and computers and phones and stuff. It's all going to be junk. It's going to end up in the trash heap in 5 years, 10 years. That is a very short wave. But we're into 3.8 billion years of evolution and 4.5, 6, 7 billion years of Earth systems. We're individuals in the generations of life that are experiencing this now. But there are many more to come, and we need to think about what kind of Earth is going to be here for them. And so the media has this responsibility, but in order for the media to get to that level, it has to understand it. So there's a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, so bring more understanding to the media about telling the truth, and also to create awareness and educate people. This is a good insight. Sister Jayanti, today's topic is global unity. And the world is struggling with geopolitics, and that create additional layers of complications to the whole climate conference. There's a lot of talk behind the scenes, what's going on, the wars and the tensions. How unity can help us from a spiritual perspective to bring the process forward here at the climate conference?
From a spiritual perspective, it's actually very, very simple. And sometimes people find it too simple in a world that we're used to complexity. But in fact, the reality is that I'm not this physical body. It's not this that makes me unique. It's the inner being, my thoughts, my feelings, my conscience, my consciousness, my personality. And these are not part of the brain. These are not part of the physical anatomy, but they're part of that metaphysical being, the soul, the being that shines in the center of the forehead. And when I understand that this is who I am, then my vision towards others is the same, that they too are spiritual beings of light. And when I see them with that vision, then there's a kinship, there's an eternal bond that links us together. But also where there is a belief in God, and I deeply believe that there is a supreme, a divine being, the source. When I recognize that there is one creator and we are the creation is one. It's not multiple, but we are the creation, and the earth, the home, is our home, this planet. And so in that awareness, I see each one as my brother, children of the one parent, coming from that source. So when we have that understanding, firstly, I'm able to have my own inner value of respect for myself, recognizing that I am a sacred being, but I also see others with that same vision. And whatever goes on inside is what gets expressed outside. And so when I learn to have respect and value for my own sanctity, then I can see you with that same vision of sacredness and respect. And so I won't do anything that's going to harm you. In India, we have a principle called ahimsa, do no harm. And it's the golden rule of all traditions, actually. Do unto others only that which you would want to have for yourself. And so do no harm. Can I do that which is of benefit to all? And so when I come to that awareness, then definitely the boundaries that humans have created, if you're up in outer space, you look down and you see one humanity, you see one world. You don't see the boundaries that we have created. And so, yes, it's very important to have spiritual consciousness. And with that, definitely, we can come back together as a family filled with respect for each other.
Wonderful explanation. I remember also I heard that unity has an incredible power. And where there's unity, everything else is possible.
It's true.
So the world needs a bit more unity. This brings me back to John. This COP so far has not yet delivered on the finance and also updated NDCs, this National Determined Contributions. And there was a call signed by very eminent former climate negotiators, Ban Ki-moon, Cristina Figueras, and Professor Rockström from Climate Institute in Potsdam. And they were asking openly that this COP has to change. What has to be done to make this COP more efficient?
Well, I'm not sure you're asking the right person about how to change the COP, but I think that what we have to see is that this is the 29th convening of the parties. And if we have an existential threat to human civilization and the earth, it doesn't take 31 years and 29 meetings in order to say we have an existential threat and we're going to have to do something. And what I've noticed and what has been interestingly happening in the ecosystem restoration community, what's been happening in the ecosystem restoration communities is that the people themselves throughout the world are listening to and looking. I mean, they're experiencing wildfires, they're experiencing decade-long droughts, and they're experiencing enormous floods, and hundreds of people are dying. Hurricanes are taking out entire islands, and then a second hurricane will hit them again, when they're down. So when you plot the trend lines from the measurements of these things, you realize that not only is the frequency increasing, but the intensity is increasing. And we have to ask ourselves, can we understand this? Or does it have to be scientists, or does it have to be politicians? And do the politicians really understand? So do the people in charge of the corporate finance, or do they understand what's happening? And what I've seen in 30 years of studying this is that basically, when we are thinking about these materialist things, we're talking about hardened infrastructure. We're talking about extraction of resources to fashion them into some product and then to sell it. And we're transporting these around the world in giant ships. And these ships are burning very dirty diesel. And when they can get away with it, they're just loading it with toxic chemicals and burning those off too. And when you start to think about that, and then they're saying, well, how much money was circulated by doing this activities? And that is not true value. That's a fake kind of value. And it does serve the special interests and the interests or the owners, but everyone else is and all the other species of life and future generations of life are all impacted by the pollution and by the disruptions. And what I've seen is that the vegetation over evolutionary time has organized to alter the physics of the planet. And when we alter the vegetation, we're not honoring, we're not understanding, we're not showing that actually this is the only place in the universe that we know that has this kind of phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And that if we allow the solar radiation to directly hit the surface of the Earth, we mustn't be surprised if the surface temperatures and the ambient air temperatures are risen, or if evaporation is massively increased instead of the recirculation of water near the lower hydrological cycle. So what we've seen in these ecosystem restoration communities is that people know this now. You can know this. And those people who know this are ready to do something about it. They understand that it's their lives and the lives of their children and their grandchildren and future generations. So I hope we can all collaborate to do this. And maybe we bring the COP down to some manageable size where some few people are discussing how we do this politically instead of having the trade show at the end of the world, and go and actually have most of the people all over the world creating real value and mitigating and adapting to climate change.
So more action and less discussion. That would be a good slogan for the overhaul of the climate conference. Such great inspirations, and time is ticking and we just have a couple of minutes left, and I would like to ask Sister Jayanti to guide a meditation and create in that meditation a space of unity for the world.
We've been hearing beautiful ideas about values and the things that matter the most. This planet of ours, our home. Let's go on an inner journey, and I invite you to follow these ideas just quietly in your own mind and see where you go. I reflect on the things I've been hearing about, and I can feel the energy in the center of my forehead. I am the being of light, the spiritual being. I have a very precious chariot, this physical body of mine, but for a short while, I'll simply focus on the being that I am. And I can feel peace within myself when I come to this awareness. And peace opens the door to love, truth, purity, and joy. These are the qualities that I feel comfortable with. These are the qualities which are the original qualities of every human soul. I begin to appreciate that every single human being is not just the physical being, but is the being of light. I step back for a moment. I look around and see my global family. Many colors, many shapes, all ages, all sizes, a huge, huge variety. but I see the light that's shining in their forehead. Each and every one of them is a being filled with the original qualities of goodness and beauty. Knowing I carry beautiful qualities in my original state, I value myself and respect myself. And now, seeing each and every human person as that being of light, I value each one. I recognize their specialities. I acknowledge the diversity, but I focus on the universal qualities that link us all together. We are one family, one species. We share the same home, this very unique planet. As we come together in this brotherhood and sisterhood, we accept responsibility for our home, this planet, and co-create a world of harmony in which humans have unity, but also harmony with all forms of life and nature itself. Om Shanti.
What a lovely experience. Thanks very much, Sister Jayanti, for this meditation. And thanks also, John, for joining us for tonight's panel discussion on unity. Thanks also to our patrons and sponsors, and to all the volunteers which make this transmission, this live session possible. Please do join us tomorrow at the same time for another session of Climate Wisdom from Baku. For details, please see our webpage. And last not least, thanks very much to our global audience for joining us, for being with us. We all hope you have been inspired and you learned a bit more what's going on. Please stay with us. We will show a short video, and after that we commence with the part number 2 of Unity for the World. Thanks very much.
Hello, I'm John Liu, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity to speak with you today remotely. I'm also very grateful to the Common Land Foundation and the Mustard Seed Trust that make it possible for me to do this work. I have been a professional witness and a student of transformational change in politics, economics, culture, and ecology over my entire adult life. In studying ecology, I learned that evolutionary succession over billions of years led to multidimensional symbiotic systems in dynamic equilibrium. This process is accumulative and leads to the creation, constant filtration, and continuous renewal of the Earth's atmosphere, the freshwater system, the fertility of the soil, and the amazing biodiversity on the Earth. Observing and analyzing how human beings over historical time have degraded natural Earth systems is of critical importance. Most emphasis has been placed on the egregious emission of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. This is both an inconvenient truth and a partial one. I have directly observed that human impacts from devegetation and other types of alteration of the Earth's biological systems allow solar radiation to directly hit the surface of the Earth, raising surface temperatures by very large amounts. This phenomenon unnaturally creates thermal drafts, driving moisture into the upper atmosphere, where it is no longer nurturing the soil and the vegetation, but instead is twice as impactful as CO2 as a greenhouse gas. We do not only have to restore carbon equilibrium, we also must restore the hydrological cycle, the pedosphere, and specifically the habitat for microbial and fungal communities that form the basis of the web of life by making minerals and nutrients from geologic materials bioavailable to plant and animal life forms. The restoration of the Loess Plateau has shown that by increasing biodiversity, biomass, and accumulated organic matter, it is possible to restore lower surface temperatures, holding moisture near the earth. By restoring the canopy, solar radiation is interrupted, creating microclimates that help recharge the lower hydrological cycle. It is possible to restore large-scale degraded landscapes that have been degraded over vast areas and over long historic time frames. Ecological restoration is not theoretical. It is physical, and the actions of millions and billions of people are needed to reverse human impact on the climate, making ecological restoration also the way to ensure full employment, food security, physical and psychological health. When ecological restoration is properly valued, logically it must become the central intention of human civilization and the basis of human economy, thus removing the perverse incentive to degrade the Earth's life support systems and instead incentivizing actions that are in the interests of all people and all life on Earth. People all over the world are already choosing to work on ecosystem restoration. The need is urgent, and those in positions of power need to humbly serve everyone who puts their hands in the soil to consciously revegetate and restore. Valuing restoration higher than materialism and honoring the wisdom and stewardship of the indigenous cultures, who have always known that all life is sacred, is a much-needed paradigm shift. This is the answer to both restoring the Earth's ecological function and also to bringing justice to those who have been and continue to be so badly abused by the spread of false beliefs based on selfishness and ignorance. In restoring the Earth's natural ecological function, we all have a role to play. If we all play together, it's going to be both effective and a whole lot more fun. Thank you for listening.